I just want to make a high-level speech, first of all, to highlight the importance of the method, and then, as I mentioned, I'll go into some details about where we are at the FSP fund, which IOSCO is very actively involved. We all agree that sound functioning of systemically important financial benchmarks is vital to the global markets. That's very apparent. And in this context, benchmarks serve for a very important financial stability function. If you look at only LIBOR and Euribor, more than $600 trillion of contracts are referenced to these only to these two big ones. And whenever we save in a money market fund or save in another short-term debt fund, or when you have a consumer loan, you buy a house for your mortgage, the rate you receive and the amount you will pay is based on these benchmarks. So benchmarks affect nearly every corner of the global economy. They also affect us as individuals. I mean, I mentioned when you're filling the tank of your car, it's oil issue, and we work on this oil PIA principles. When you are heating your apartment, probes in the UK, gas issue, mortgages when you buy an apartment. Even when you want to propose marriage to your fiancé, you need to buy a ring. It's gold. Now we have this precious metals issue. I think there's almost nothing left which is not manipulated. I know you get angry now, or say under investigation. Better to say under investigation. So we saw probes and investigations into IBORs, oils, gas. Gas is the fix, gold and silver, forex, which is the recent major issue, and also precious metals and warehousing. A few days ago, we read some news about this as well. There are some issues in the UK. So these benchmarks are relied upon by millions of individuals and corporates who really believe that the submissions are the submissions are reliable. The submissions made by the panel banks. Apparently, this was not the case each time, all the time. So I just wanted to say a couple of words about how we ended up here. Actually, the interbank unsecured lending market has dried after the Lehman crisis, and I see four major things that happened. First of all, this increased credit risk in the market after the post-Lehman environment. The second thing is cheap money from central banks, especially from US Fed and the European Central Bank. Third is deleveraging, and also Basel requirements. When these four factors came together, now the interbank, there's a drought in the interbank lending market. You know, as the governor of Bank of England said, Mervyn King, LIBOR is more or less the rate at which banks do not want to lend to each other. This is, so we need sound governance and oversight processes, and this is very urgent and a high priority issue. And that's why IOSCO and the FSP are working on this. We all agree that if the underlying market, if a benchmark is not representative of its underlying market, it will be vulnerable to manipulation. But also we should keep in mind that these are too big to quit benchmarks for now, at least, until we found a replacement or a substitute to them. So we need to fix the problems there, while at the same time looking at other alternatives. I think this is very important. And as I mentioned earlier, we should also keep in mind that there's no perfect one set of principles which will apply across all types of benchmarks and indices. It was very challenging for IOSCO to coordinate regulators in a complete benchmark regulation framework, and also it is very difficult to orchestrate a total global transition. So there was the need for regulatory intervention, and that's what we are trying to do now under the coordination of the FSP and the mandate of the G20. So let me give some information about what we did as IOSCO and where we are at the current moment. For the first time, as IOSCO, we constituted a board-level task force, which was composed of the chairman of securities regulations from all around the globe after the LIBOR issue. And initially, we made a long list of benchmarks and indices by asking to our members about the important indices and benchmarks in their jurisdictions. And from that long list, we created a short list and at the end, there were a lot of discussions about this one-size-fits-all issue and whether to confer some exemptions to some types of benchmarks and indices, and at the end we decided that the scope should be broad. But as I mentioned earlier, there were some concerns, especially from the equity side, from the commodity side, and also smaller indices, performance indices. In order to be able to address those concerns, we designed a two-tier system of principles, which has also been followed by the European Commission to some extent, where at the first level we had some high-level principles which were applicable to the whole globe of benchmarks and indices, whereas at the second level we went into more granularity to address the concerns of some benchmarks, especially also the issues which occur due to some benchmarks' reliance on submissions, and also some conflicts of interest arising from their ownership structures. So IOSCO published these 19 overarching principles. It is not as granular as the European Commission's proposal, because these are more high level. I would say the constitute of the benchmarks in the globe, because they have been endorsed by the G20 as the global benchmark principles. So I think there are three main issues in this work that I identified. The first thing is the submission issue. When there are problems or vulnerabilities in the submission process, this later on affects the determination process. So these need to be addressed before we come to that determination stage. And the second thing was the content and the transparency of the methodologies. I would say the more we have transparency, the less vulnerability to manipulation. This is very important. And also the governance processes. Conflicts of interest may exist both at the submitter level or administrative level. So we try to address these issues with our benchmarks principles. We only had two exemptions. One of them was the government agencies when they publish a benchmark for public policy purposes, and the second one was settlement and reference prices by central counterparties, which is also in the European Commission's proposal. Apart from these, there was no exemption to any type of benchmarks. When I say this, first, we published the principles in July, and before that, in April and in January, we had two consultation reports, and as well as two roundtables, one in the UK, one in the US. So we received a lot of concerns, especially from the equity side. As IOSCO, and then in the final report, we tried to introduce more flexibility into the principles, and also we highlighted in many parts of the report that the principles should be applied proportionally based on the size and the systemic importance of the benchmark. Now a few words on where we are at the FSP front. We have three main work streams here. One is the FSP's official sector steering group, which IOSCO also participates actually. The mission of the official sector steering group is to coordinate these various national initiatives for assessing some, the important benchmarks against IOSCO principles. Their second mission is they also guide the work of the market participants group, which is working on the transition issue. And as a third mission, they are coordinating the work about the contingency plans for systemically important benchmarks. The second working group is the market participant. The official sector steering group is composed of central banks and their securities regulators. It's also chaired by Martin Wheatley of UKFC and Jeremy Stein of Fed, US Fed. And we have the market participants group, which is working on the transition issue. Now they are trying to determine the alternatives to the IBORs. And also they will propose strategies, they will make proposals to the official sector steering group in relation to the transition issue and also the contingency issue, how we can handle this problem. It is one of the major problems. And we try to achieve some diversity in this group as well. We have the buy side, sell side, different geographical diversification as well as different currencies. So they just published their methodology. Not published, they just finished their methodology. And the third group is the contingency working group for the big three, LIBOR, Euribor, and TIBOR. They are designing contingency plans. Now they have designed their high-level principles, and the work still continues. Meanwhile, as IOSCO, we are also working under the coordination of official sector steering group. We have been commissioned by the FSP to work for the assessment of the big three again, Euribor, LIBOR, TIBOR, and make an assessment against IOSCO principles. Now we are at the stage of finalizing our methodology, and then we will make this assessment and detect the vulnerabilities and how to address the problems, and then we will report back to the FSB and then to the G20 in summer of 2014. So this is basically where we are at the IOSCO.